Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to The Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your ghost and hide along the way. Today, we are starting a 3-episode little trilogy where we talk about the process of creating new work. This is a topic, a subject that really interests both me and Jay Gilligan, who I am conversing with here in this, and we thought that the conversation would be just one episode and 1 hour conversation talking about the route that he has taken and he's developed over the last decade or so on color and juggling. So we turned out that we thought it was going to be 1, then we thought it was going to be 2, but it's become 3 episodes, each delving into it. And of course we are talking now specifically about how this one show was created. But I think it's important that I do always when I'm listening to something is to always try to be aware of yourself in relation to this. Although me and Jay are talking about what we are talking about, the creation of a juggling show with centered around what it means to juggle then things of different objects, of different color, sorry. So I would like you to keep it in mind that you are listening to this actively. You're listening to this and thinking of your own process. You're listening to this thinking about that particular trick, that particular show, that particular idea that you are developing at the moment. Or, something will have emerged in what you've read. You've seen something on YouTube or something has popped up in your feed that's maybe 2 or 3 things comes up that starts to connect together. So keep those ideas in mind now, and in a sense try to imagine that we are talking about your project. In this kind of listening, it's like you will hear slightly other things, that even though we might be talking specifically about the difficulties around finding a title that captures what your show is actually about, then you might find something that becomes valuable to you, that is related to something that's quite different. So I'm asking you to listen to this episode and to all the episodes, not just to exactly, that's his opinion there, or that's this other person's opinion there. We want to listen. You listen for the good stuff, because we don't have enough time for everything. We don't even have enough time for all of the good stuff. So let's not worry about the stuff that's not relevant to you, and just skip past that and take note of the stuff that feels like it is talking directly to you. So I am again coming to you from the caravan. If you're lucky, you hear the birds tweeting outside, and I'm about to let you in on this what ended up being a massive recording session. That day I think we recorded 5 episodes. This is the first of them. One of the things that has happened since we spoke in Helsinki is that you have performed a show called Another Sunset in an art space called Den Fantastiska Platsen, the fantastic place here in Stockholm. And the show is an exploration of color and juggling. And I thought we could start by you just telling me a little bit about, where does this idea come from? Because what is the interest, and what are the interesting aspects of juggling and color? Because on the rough end of the spectrum, couldn't we just say it's but the clowns already juggle with all the colors, so what's left to say or whatever? So to go back to the beginning of how did color start to interest you?
Yeah, no, that's funny. That's a funny place to start. We can start with the clown juggling all the colors, and what you mean is you get that greeting card. You always reference the greeting card image of the clown with the circle kind of drawn in the air with little dots and dashes to denote movement of the balls, but the balls are red, yellow, and blue or green or whatever. And you can even go from there and say that it was kind of a mark, or a rite of passage when you would start off juggling, that you would finally get the balls that were all the same color. I don't know if you remember that,
Yeah.
but when you start off juggling, you get that beginner juggling kit or whatever, and normally the ball is red, yellow, and blue.
Yeah.
And then you juggle for a while, a few years, but then you get more serious about it. Then you want to get maybe a set of balls that aren't all different colors, because at least in the hobbyist juggling culture, that's not really a lot of respect. You don't get a lot of respect for doing that. And then you kind of graduate up to, like, I remember my second set of balls that were the same color were all navy blue, because we went to a juggling festival and they were on sale. And then I got 4 of them because I was going to learn how to juggle 4, and that's the point where I was getting serious. But thinking about it now, part of the seriousness of that kind of showing your commitment to what you're going to do with your craft, or this, I mean, I was 8 years old then, but still, hey, I want the 4 balls, but I'm going to do 4, but they had to also be the same color. And then kind of also very appropriate for this discussion, didn't really matter, they were navy blue.
That's exactly so interesting. My first colors that I can remember that I then bought that was one color was all of them yellow, but there was one blue ball as well. And I was doing a lot of cross arm tricks, and a lot of those separate out. Like Mills Mess has one ball doing a different pattern than the other 2.
Yeah.
And then you can do that. If you do a sequence of those, you can have the blue ball do a bunch of stuff that's chaos, 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 and all of a sudden it settles into another pattern, and the blue ball is doing something distinctly different from the other 2. And I have now no real recollection of why I ended up with yellow, but I did like yellow, and I had yellow as painted on my suitcase and stuff. There was black and yellow, so maybe I just couldn't get a black ball. We can get back to that.
Yeah.
Black juggling balls.
Yeah, or props of any.
Props.
Yeah, it's hard to
Not
get.
common, but it's really interesting because I probably did it because I liked yellow. Now that I think back, I wasn't quite as. I didn't just buy them because they were on sale.
Yeah,
but it's
sure.
really interesting. I never thought of that I did that too. And part of being serious is to have the same color. Was when you buy a juggling club, 3 juggling clubs, they also came in like red, blue, and green or whatever. I can't remember what the shiny tape that was on the middle of the ones that I had, but they also were in different color. Yeah.
Yeah, there's such a cycle of the culture to the colors actually over the course of the journey of maybe a juggler's life, and also the trends in the community as it goes on. So for example, there's this thing of like, now I've committed to this craft. I'm a little bit more serious. I'm getting deeper into it. I want to get respect from my peers. I want to get validation from the community. Hey, I have to juggle objects that are serious now or more serious. And then it's one color palette. And it's not fair at all. In the same way, when we were working on the REFLEX show together, and we started with a broad stroke idea of like juggling historically is balls, rings, and clubs. It's about skill, difficulty, and risk. And now what's left after that, and that there hasn't been, not that there hasn't been any more exploration than that, but that in terms of the public's mind, perhaps that's the conversation. And so like in a generality or a general statement, a broad stroke, we kind of use that as a shorthand at the beginning of the show at one point. And there was a moment in our script writing session where it was like, hey man, I can't go on stage and say, nobody's done anything more than this. And then that's when we turned it around and said, well, we're going to make it about me specifically instead of try to cover the art form as a whole and make big broad statements, because it was kind of impossible to do in a short enough format.
Yeah, and also the format was always based on entertainment, and that's something we can talk about that I want to get back to also. But entertainment, as I think of it, has to do with how accessible the work is to the audience. It's like they don't have to have an education to be able to know it. They don't have to know or particularly love and be dedicated to juggling to enjoy the show, or so. It's that they can effortlessly pay attention, kind of no matter who you are. So that leaves a low sort of threshold you don't expect. So we had the show was going to open in New York City. It was not going to be a niche show just for jugglers. It was going to have an appeal to everybody. So in that, we're going like, you can't do a quick scope of all development of juggling because there's just not. Well, it's not a lecture. It is supposed to be a fun show about juggling. Yeah.
Right, and so well, we're having a conversation now, so we're not having a lecture either. So to apply that to the color thing, like it's impossible to really, cover every detail of color, but just to recognize this idea that in general, we'll get to it, but in general, we haven't really investigated color. But of course, we did the best we could with what we had. So, for example, you didn't buy your yellow things because they were on sale. You bought the yellow because it appealed to you. You liked yellow. Yeah. But it wasn't like you picked your favorite shade of yellow. There was just a yellow thing there. And of the 3 choices, I guess, right? Yeah. Those are the ones you picked. Oh, okay, here's 3 choices, Frodo. Which one do you like the best? I like number 2. Okay, done. That's the depth of kind of the process we've had and still have, just to say. And so, of course, pretty quickly, if we go on this kind of hypothetical hobbyist juggler's journey into the future, then you can say, okay, now we have a singular color for our props that unify the set and signify that we're committed to taking this to the next step beyond the initial, first beginner set of props. And kind of after that, where you go is you get everything that's all white, right? And because the white thing is really pointing towards performing, and again, another level of seriousness and commitment, right? And I'm not saying that there's any sort of truth in this in terms of technique or visual expression or even like commercial success or otherwise. It's just, I feel it is a cultural thing, and it's become so ingrained in the hobbyist culture and even the professional culture that we start to believe that there's truths there. Oh yeah, but you need to juggle everything with all white because, well, it's a black background and you're gonna probably be wearing black shirt and the props have to contrast against your costume. I mean, there are little technical details like that, but I don't think there's
it's not that it comes completely out of nowhere,
right?
But and it's also maybe not something that, maybe it is, but to some extent this might not be something that people talk about so much. It's like going, oh yeah, I see you have bought all the navy blue. Yeah, okay, well, you still have a way to go before you get to your white real professional.
Totally, no, totally.
That's not what
this is not a dialogue.
Not what it is. It's just like a observation on, and when you say it, and you go, yep, I can see that as a broad stroke that these are real things in.
Well, so I mean, right now we can just say we're having a little fantasy together to look at the evolution of the color journey of, because let's just pick an aspect of what we're doing. Color, cool, let's look at the world through that idea. But later on I hope to motivate why we're doing that a little bit more deeply. But what's really funny, just to note, to stick on this little idea, is you get those white props, and then that's a real serious moment. I remember getting my first, the silicone balls were white, and they were so expensive. My uncle bought them for me. Not even my parents, but my uncle stepped in and kind of had this intervention of like, I will secure the silicone balls for you.
How many did you get?
I got 5.
Oh yeah.
And of course, I could have ordered different colors. Totally. On the website, there was neon yellow and green, neon green. I got the white because I'm serious. I'm doing shows now. I'm 13 or whatever I was, 11 or something. Right? I'm not joking around anymore.
Yeah.
And so what's really funny, though, is I think a lot of jugglers go through this journey and they get the white objects, and that is the default now. And when you get deeper and deeper into it and farther you go, suddenly you want to rebel against the white. And so then you kind of, like at one point, a few years ago, it was the thing to do was to be ironic, to go back to the multicolored clubs. So you would buy one red, one green, one yellow, one blue, and then you do your cool juggling with that kind of as a, a little rebellion against the norm that we've, this conformity or whatever. And there's been different trends over the years to try to deal with that. And but just to note that there's a cycle where you finally get to all white and you're there for years and years. And then finally, as an artist, it's not so carefully considered. It's not like, hey, I'm using white, man, I'm sick of that. That's kind of a cop out sometimes. It's just a default, you know. It just kind of erases the question.
It's the new way, or it's the professional way of showing that you haven't put any thought into it, or there's no.
Well, yeah, you don't.
When you starter, you get those balls because that's what all the beginner sets are. They're multicolored, and then at some point you gravitate towards white because you're a serious performer, and then at some point during that, then you go, why did I actually choose white? And has it now become about the props being a certain thing, and now I'm rebelling against that because I want my skill to show that's what it's about. It's not.
Well, I think there's an aspect of just like it's white by default, so you don't need to invest any energy into it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like, hey, here's a detail that I just never need to discuss again.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you do have time and space and energy to discuss it again with yourself or with your company you're working in or whatever. You have the thought. You have the thought at some point after a while, after years, and you go, oh, white rings, huh? Maybe I should. Maybe you know, because I just spent. Because when you get deeper and deeper into the infrastructure of your performances, as you get more resources and you get more time and more thoughts and, you know, developing more about what you're doing, you know, you'll have that costume meeting with the costume designer where you're paying 10,000 euros for, you know, 2 sets of a shirt and pants or whatever. And you're talking about color for days and fabric choices and, you know what I mean? And you get these in these situations with the designers and whatever, light designers and set designers. So at some point it occurs to you and you go, oh yeah, but the rings are white. Maybe I should use some different colors. I've just been using white for years because I didn't want to think about it. And still the options available to you, it isn't again to go and just go to the color wheel and point your finger where you want that color to be. You still go to the online juggling shop and you have 5 colors. And you pick the yellow because it's the nicest out of that red that's a little bit too dark, and the blue's a little bit too ugly, and the green's not your really good favorite shade of green, but the yellow's okay, and it's not white, right? So it's always a compromise is what I mean, right? You're in this process where you don't really have total control of all the options. So it's kind of, again, a default kind of variation.
It's interesting because it's almost like connects up with Eric Aubrey's ideas of the early jugglers made their own props.
Yeah.
As well.
Sure.
So that you would paint them and you would do these things to the props that you had made with a video of Bobby May juggling those clubs that are big like
the hairy
helium.
lens,
like Zeppelins kind of
or
whatever. And it's those weird things that has been juggled over the time because you couldn't go to a shop and buy it. But now in the consumer culture, and you've narrowed it down to balls, rings, and clubs, and they are in these specific things, and you got the skills with a certain prop, so you stick with that, and they have 5 colors on offer. So that's the choice that we have to go with.
I mean, there's a couple of things here to link to the next part. One is you know, I was or am into sneakers. I like shoes. I think they're fun. Shoe design, sneaker design, whatever, sneaker culture. It's kind of fun. A little bit of a hobby, side hobby. And, you know, for a while there at the beginning of the internet, if you remember that, Frodo.
I remember that.
You know, there became a time when you could, it became an option that you could custom design your shoes. I never forget this. Because what you could do is you'd have these websites and it would break down like the top of the shoe, the back of the shoe, the bottom of the shoe, and the laces and the tongue, all the different parts of the shoe. And you could, on some websites, you could literally go and click on that part of the shoe and there would be a color wheel that would pop up. This is maybe one of the first times it really stuck in my head about this with juggling. And you could just move that slider around that color wheel and you could just, you know, pick all your colors of your shoe and then you go order it, you know, and a few weeks later that shoe comes to your house and the top of the shoe is that color you just picked on the color wheel. And of course there was a moment when I was like, hey, why aren't we doing this with juggling? Like, why can't I go to a juggling website, click on a certain size club or a certain style of club and just move that slider around on the color wheel? That was like a thought. That's years and years before any of this stuff going on, first of all. But that was like made a big impact on me, this idea
just
of like,
connecting sneaker culture. This is possible here. People care about what color shoes they wear, and they can choose any color, and then just applying that idea.
Just that it was like a
juggling, going
possibility.
Just
that you could even. I can't even.
Not that you even particularly at that moment was like, I gotta have a
not at all
mauve set of rings.
But it occurred. Just this idea of like, oh, wait a second, what if that was a thing I could do? And then but that was just a real like moment of like, I don't know. And then I just moved on because it wasn't possible.
Yeah.
But I do remember that really distinctly.
But also though, at that time, it was probably also not something that you were fully pursuing. You hadn't gotten to the point where you either had separated.
Yeah.
Because that's a really, you were saying it on coming here, and I was saying we're not talking about this now. But the idea of that what juggling is, visual music. We've talked about that before.
It's a for now it's a good shorthand, I think.
Yeah, I'm setting it up because we just want to set up the situation. Yeah. But that means that just like there's tone and timbre and there is
different
all
notes,
notes and all of that. That's aspect of music, but not so commonly thought about. How hard are you playing the note, and what did like all of this?
Oh yeah, you could say there's the same note, and then you use different instruments to play it.
Different instruments to play it, and then when you are playing that different instruments, there's all sorts of information of how you are to play it. Totally. You to play the clarinet really hard, and it gets one.
Canbrio, the Flank Karamazov brothers with scouring pads.
So it's like you and. When you have all of that with music, then you're looking at, well, if this is a visual, what else is visual in the juggling? And it's that there is color going on there. The objects that juggle necessarily have to have some sort of color. By default, they have just color. Have to be, yeah. So it's like somebody listening after doing music all that time, all of a sudden goes, what? It matters how hard you pushes the button, or it matters exactly what instrument it is. They're going like, we play the bass because that's what we do, and all of a sudden somebody goes, what if we do use a bass clarinet for that thing?
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's funny you bring that up because I had used that example before and forgotten about it. Yeah, it's like, hey Frodo, check out this song I wrote. It goes like this, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And then you're like, oh, why did you use the violin? And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah. Like, but you could have used the piano. Like, what? Wait, what? Yeah. Why would I do that? Yeah. It's like that, It's like I only care about a very specific, certain aspect of what I'm showing you. Yeah. And fair enough, we don't have unlimited, infinite resources to invest into time and energy and money and whatever to care about every single little detail, and it's impossible to ever know every single thing that we're doing, but it is really hilarious in one way, right? It would be the same thing again. The other analogy that's also easy is painting. It's like, hey, Frodo, check out this painting. I painted a car. And you're like, yeah, but why did you make it yellow? Well, what do you mean? No, I don't care what color it is, Frodo. I only care, look at the shape of my car I painted. And that can totally be a valid discussion, and for sure there's painters who work like that. But in general, I think we can agree that's a pretty odd conversation if I'm like, hey, check out this painting I made, but don't care about the color.
The colors doesn't matter in this picture.
Only care about
the content.
Or the shape or the composition or whatever.
But and in another way, again, just to get at it from yet one more angle, it's like I remember watching skateboard movies in like the 80s and stuff, and there was art direction or whatever, but it was a gritty style that I had never seen in any other kind of film content or whatever before. And it was cool. And what was cool was that what really mattered was what was in the movie. Yes. It was like, it was yet to come, some of these even crazy stylized things shot on film and stuff by people who really, because they were just working it out and just putting a wide angle lens on the front of the thing and skating after their friend. So it was about the content, and you could choose to just not look at all of the other stuff and just focus on that.
That's exactly what you're talking about. There is the thing, the move away from white props back to multicolored props.
Right.
It is that, right? It's taking control of and saying, oh, the white props, they denote a certain relationship to the work, a certain status. I'm going to be it has to be white because I'm going to be on a stage in a theater with a black background. How about that? You're going to be in a theater. You think, you're kind of placing yourself culturally somewhere.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, no, but I'm just going to go back and use these beginner sets of clubs, but do my advanced trick. It becomes more about what you're doing then and less about the culture surrounding it. And that's what you're talking about, the skateboarding videos, right? So this kind of rejection of the white prop was also pointing towards what is valuable about the work here. Like what's valuable isn't that they're white. We don't care about the stage lighting. We're not on the stage. We are outside doing a skateboard video. But what we care about is what I'm doing with these things. So therefore, it doesn't really matter what those things are.
Yeah.
Right. And there's another little like loose end to tie up, which is funny, it is that thing of when you get your first set of clubs, they do have the shiny decoration on them.
Yeah.
And the journey of that is like, well, that's not true. The first set of clubs I got was
solid
red,
one piece.
Well, it was the red. It was Jugglebug red, yellow, and blue. And again, that's not serious. That's your beginner set.
That's the clickety clack when they fall on the ground. Sometimes in hard plastic. Yeah.
So or on your head.
Yeah.
And so my second set of clubs was the real set, right? And then I got all the same color, but it was the silver reflective decorations, Brian Dubé, European style with the silver top, silver middle, and silver handle with the black trim, whatever. That was like serious thing. But part of the validity of making it real was the reflective, shiny decoration, because again, that gives you status as a performer. I'm 8 years old. I'm not a performer, but I want to be. You know what I mean? I'm looking ahead to my heroes. Well, they have shiny clubs. Well, why is that shiny stuff there? I mean, it comes from the circus, right? It comes from doing a show, and we have. That's why this hobbyist culture of juggling and the performing culture of juggling, and it's just such a tangled mess of values and where traditions and where things come from. Because for sure, when I got that set of clubs when I was 8 years old, I didn't think about stage lights, man. No. I wasn't thinking about being on stage and having those glint and I wasn't thinking about my costume with the sequins, the paillettes on them. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking, this looks cool because it's shiny, right? I'm 8 years old. But the reason that exists is there's a whole history and the whole organic evolution of why I'm having that in my hand.
Yeah.
But the first thing I did, and all my friends did, when we started to grow more conscious of what we were doing. And that's what I mean is when I got that first club at 8 years old and I had the shiny decorations, I wasn't conscious of any of the choices that had made that club exist. I just thought it looked pretty. And I knew it was professional.
Yeah.
And it was the most expensive one. So so it had to be, again, buying the 4 balls navy blue, they were on sale. Now I'm to the point where I need to buy the most expensive clubs because that's the game now, right? I'm trying to elevate myself in the whatever in this in the juggling world. But the first thing you do when you get serious about your work for real, you take the decorations off.
Right.
Because I'm not working in the circus. I'm not working, I don't know where I have these lights or whatever. It was a teenager thing, I'm going to take these silly decorations off. This is not cool.
Yeah.
Right? There's an aspect of that too. But it's kind of funny to see that evolution of the decorations also as a status symbol and as a economic, cultural thing. And then again, like, so just to wrap that little idea up is that then in the end, for example, the company CEAEO with Eric Langekel and Brahms and Jordan and Saunders and Netta and everybody who works there, but for the show All the Fun, then because every single show we would always have a conversation about the props. But again, I just wanted to say, so again, it's not that like we never cared about the color of our things. We cared deeply. But that conversation was, which of these 5 things should I buy? Like, what can I buy? Oh, I buy the least bad one. I mean, me and Wes Peden have had that conversation for our whole lives. What color of ball should we get? Well, this is the least bad one. It's like, it's never like, this is the good one, but this is the one we can buy. That's okay. It'll be okay. But in the show All the Fun, that conversation turned out to be like, man, we don't want to use the white props. Again, this rejection of that trajectory. And what they ended up doing was getting street art markers, like graffiti markers, and then just like coloring rainbow patches all over the juggling clubs with these markers, which was a whole level of research, just to find the marker that would sustain the abuse of a show, that would kind of stay on long enough. And I think they had to refresh the clubs every month, but not every show.
Oh, that's good.
But this idea of like, let's take some control, let's have some autonomy over the tools that we're using, our craft, the clubs, and we want to have an intentional idea and design. And I loved the objects and all the fun. I directed the juggling in that show, and they had so they had the club bodies like with these street art markers like multicolor, and they had the juggling balls. They did the same thing to the balls. I thought they looked amazing, but again, then just talking about the sustainability of this kind of, or this this control you have over what you're doing. It's like, yeah, that stuff would wear off and have to be renewed at least once a month. It's not a real long-term solution, but it's you're working within, your means basically. And to say like, okay, I can color the props myself. Well, what's my ability to do that? And again, it wasn't like, oh, street art markers. I mean, there was a whole process of buying paints and markers of other types and whatever other ideas you had to make your own color. But there was that desire there of, hey, I want to have my own color. I want to have my own idea because I'm doing art. I have an idea and I want to make it real.
And you've discovered an aspect of juggling, and when you look at it in hindsight, you're going, well, it's this awakening to the fact that you can choose to play this piece on a piano or on because of the particular type of that tone. You know how to play the accordion, but every now and then it's good to not play the accordion. As they say, a gentleman is somebody who knows how to play the accordion, but chooses not to.
Yeah, totally.
So it's good to not just do the red and yellow and the green. So you're discovering an aspect of it, and we're sort of describing how anyone who juggles has a certain relation to it, but it doesn't start until this show here now. All the fun is starting to explode out and going like, no, we want to take control over it.
Well, definitely like for sure over the entire history of juggling, people have tried to approach color in different ways, right? But in terms, because again, it's this tangling of hobbyist culture into the evolution of professional culture, back to hobbyist culture, whatever you want to say, that it's really hard to even see where we are right now in terms of like where things came from and why they are as they are. Yep. But it's kind of fun to try to find the boundaries of the box that we're in for.
And it's always, the box is always formed by your own experiential horizon or whatever. So we're not making any claims that this is the definitive story of juggling. And
but one important thing to realize now about where we're at is it is what you said earlier about Eric saying that, back in the day you'd build your own props. And so nowadays, if you're a juggler, again, you can just go on the internet and you just Google juggling clubs and you're taken to one of the 3 main websites or whatever, right? 10 websites, who cares? There's a finite amount of places you can buy pre-made, pre-manufactured juggling props. And it's the same props that everybody else uses. And the game is to try to do something different than the other person. Like me and you have the same club. What do you do with your club that I don't do with mine? What do I do with mine that you don't do with yours? Yeah. It's a fun game. I mean, that's what I grew up with. That's what you grew up with. That's the game. But then if you start thinking about like, hey, I'm a visual artist, that's a little bit of a different game. Like, let's say we're painters. So you have the same red, I have the same red. What do you paint with your red that I don't paint with my red? That's a little bit of a weird conversation that we don't normally have. And so, again, this gets into this area of what can we... Well, normally, we don't really care necessarily about the color of the object so specifically because what we're interested in is the skill or the difficulty or the risk or the novelty, the creativity, or whatever other value that we place upon the juggling and the technique itself. The technique itself is dominant, and the objects are secondary, to say the least, in terms of their aesthetic quality. Because the normal thing that we care about with objects is what shape are they? Ball club ring is easy to say. How many are there? Oh, you're juggling 7 balls. And then what are they doing? I'm doing a shower. I'm doing under the leg, behind the back. That's the quality. That's kind of the end of our normal idea about what.
Whereas what everyone like, that's level 1. If we're now talking that there could be other dimensions there, is like going, that's the initial skill, difficulty, risk, and then the shape.
And I want to say, like, one thing is that, of course, we can start to talk about texture, materials, center of gravity, densities, weights, whatever. And we do talk about those things in a super narrow sliver of range of qualities. Everybody has their favorite club. Everybody has their favorite ball. But if you look at them as a wider selection of like an overview of what's commercially available, they're within a super, super narrow range of qualities of texture and weight and this and that. And like you were saying earlier about Bobby May juggling the Harry Lynn clubs, these huge wicker basket almost looking things with handles, right? Zeppelin, hot air balloons with handles on them. You don't see clubs like that now.
Yeah.
Like all the clubs you buy are within a certain range. I mean, I'm sure we could map out the industry pretty quickly and easily. And you would get your parameters of like, thickness and width and all these things. That just to recognize we do have really personal preferences about props. Like people are super connected to their props. Jugglers are super physically, emotionally invested in these objects that they have.
Like a musician being connected to their instruments.
But
there's a certain of scope there too. Like if somebody all of a sudden decides to do another ball that has a very peculiar quality, you need to work very long and hard to find a new group of people who will dedicate themselves to learning a new skill or whatever, which would then take you into potentially having a club that moves in an odd pattern because of an odd center of gravity. Like, was it fish heads that were a little bit...
Yeah, the radical fish.
Radical fish.
Yeah.
They had a different center of gravity and moved a bit differently, as far as I remember, and that was a thing for a while. I mean, maybe this is like in the 90s or something.
Yeah.
But you do need then people who dedicate themselves to a object that moves differently. And is that then the same as people who make changes to the shape of the violin that now makes it more that you go, so it's almost like there's certain industries or skill things that focuses into a narrow thing?
Yeah, I mean, what you're touching on too is there's another aspect of like, in one way we think of circus and jugglers as part of circus and stuff as being kind of wild people, maybe sometimes counterculture, sometimes experimental or more curious about the world, or you go juggle in the park, it's a little bit weird, it's not your normal, you're not just walking the dog, but you're doing this unusual activity that not everybody does, so you're a little bit different. And then because you're a little bit different, maybe there's this idea that, well, you are also a little bit more open-minded, because you validated that choice to be, I'm going to go to the park today and juggle, and that's a little bit different, and you were open enough to be receptive to that. But in one way, I have to say jugglers are really conservative, right? And it's not fun. It's not like, hey, Frodo, I got a new club and I moved the center of gravity 3 centimeters towards the handle. Like, check it out.
Look how it flips, yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's a fun curiosity for a second, but I'm not really seriously going to like take that, into my life, because I'm doing real stuff. And the real stuff, again, it is this community-minded set of techniques that we all recognize as valid. And I always relate it like this. If you show up and you have a new 3-ball trick and it's super cool, and I show up and I have a new trick with 1 ball and 2 rings and it's super cool, you win. Because nobody really does 2 rings and a ball. Yeah. That's not really a thing. But 3 balls is a thing.
Yeah.
Everybody's done 3 balls. And so there's a certain cultural cachet that comes with this universal recognition of like, everybody can immediately relate to the 3-ball thing because they do 3 balls themselves. The 2 rings and a ball, they can visually see that it's cool. They can probably intuit that like it's technically difficult, so there's some sort of credibility there. But like in terms of everybody doing, there's just not a group of people, a critical mass of people who carry around 2 rings and a ball only, and that's what they dedicate themselves to. So there is this cultural recognition of like, you want to be innovative, you want to be progressive, but not too much. Because if you're too far away, you alienate the community that's going to give you that support for being progressive, right? Yeah. And if it's even too far removed, they don't even recognize it as being progressive or innovative. Because it's unrecognizable. Yeah. Right? It's like it's so far outside their system of values that they can't even perceive what you're doing. And I've seen that happen in juggling a couple times. The most notable time, I've said this example before, but it's Greg Kennedy when he showed up with his clear plastic bowl in 1996, and he's rolling balls in the bowl. And of course, all the jugglers back then, because we had the definition of a drop in 1996, which was that something hits the floor. We had a big bowl. No balls were literally hitting the floor, so he couldn't drop. That's not juggling. And then the really smart thing he did was he left that bowl. He competed in the competition. He won. And, half the jugglers were just up in arms like, that wasn't even juggling. How could he get the gold medal? And then he couldn't even drop. But the really cool thing Greg did was he put that bowl in the gym overnight at the festival, and anybody in that sports hall could walk up and try it. And everybody in the festival was like, oh, this is super hard. Like, this bowl isn't that big. There's the risk of collision is just, infinitely higher.
Yeah.
And, and then they started to relate to it. Then they could relate to collisions. Oh yeah, but when I juggle my balls in the air, they also collide. This bowl thing isn't totally useless, right?
And the collision is now, it gets conflated together with the drop. So a collision is a complete meltdown. So any collision now, that's what the drop is, and then
then they could start to relate to it, right? And it wasn't alienating
But it's because he's
anymore.
changed the game. And isn't it always like that though? When there's the Stravinsky when he played the music and it caused a riot. Was it Spring Riots that goes, because people were just like, on this atonal crazy music, it's like it just worked people up so much that people just smashed chairs in the theater.
Totally.
and then you listen to it now and you're going like, yeah, it's got some atonal sort of stuff in there, but it's not Cradle of Filth or some sort
the other good example, which I've talked to you about before, but I don't mention much, is the triangle ring.
But that's the same thing.
Right, yeah.
Like you bring a triangle ring to the or a triangle.
It was like in 2002, Svinborg EJC. I guess that was the year. I hate when people have discussions and they get the years wrong. You could just Google it. So let's just say Svinborg EJC, somewhere around 2000, early 2000s. Instead of a circle, like
instead of a ring?
juggling ring is a circle. Then somebody, which was Iman from Renegade Juggling, she made a triangle in the spirit of a ring. And people were mad. Like, people were literally angry about having a triangle. And I always think, again, I understand it from a hobbyist cultural viewpoint in the way that these people were alienated because nobody juggled a triangle. So it had no utility. It was literally stupid. It was a stupid idea because I juggle circles and that's not a circle. So from that viewpoint, I kind of get being offended somehow, but as like an instigation, you're threatening my my existence, my reality. Like, I kind of get that. But if you say juggling isn't only about throwing and catching, it could also be about whatever aesthetics, composition, whatever, and you map that to any other sort of art form. I mean, imagine, Frodo, if I was a sculptor in this day and age and I came to you and said, hey, Frodo, I got a new idea, and it's going to make you mad. I'm going to offend you, so just get ready. Get ready? So normally I sculpt a circle, it's round, and yesterday I gave it 3 corners. I call it a triangle. Check that out.
Yeah.
And you just punch me.
It's a non-event.
I mean, it's ridiculous. But that's what happened in the EJC.
Yeah.
People were super mad. Like, not everybody, but certain people were really offended by this triangle. And I'm just going like, what is the problem here? I mean, at the very least, you can just ignore it. But, or at the very most, you could maybe comprehend that, like, oh, wow, that could potentially have some sort of value in my practice.
And it's interesting because from a point of view of a professional performer who's making a living from somehow standing out from the crowd so that they want to book you instead. So to be the first person to juggle 7 triangles, it's like, and you have a triangle costume and triangle balls, or I don't know, then you have an angle and it's got an Egyptian themed music as that. I don't know. All of a sudden you have a hook and you can go, so it's got a value in that regard. But let's go back to color.
So that's an easy
big explorer.
Well, so that's an easy step to color, right there. Is this idea that we can care about juggling for something more than the skill or the physical action of it, right? Mm-hmm. So we can talk about maybe other qualities of what juggling could be or could do or could give. Mm-hmm. And so right there, if we want to bring juggling into that, let's just say for now, to keep it easy, that art world, then you go, well, juggling is a visual art, and okay, what's one of the main aspects of visual art potentially?
Yeah.
Color.
It's color and shapes and
I mean, but
it's
color.
But color.
Yeah.
For now, because we've already talked about the shape, and we're going.
Right.
Yeah, color is a huge aspect. We've just said it's a visual art form, and it's like you have been making painting, and somebody suggests, "Hey, let's." I know the normal beginner sets has the 6 colors, but what if we had used a color wheel instead?
So there's 2 things there. I mean, the one thing I say in the show, it's a line in the show that this another sunset thing that we're talking about.
Yeah. This is the preliminary talk that's setting up what color and what juggling and why this is a thing. Because when you just say it, we talked about this yesterday or whenever it was, like you go, oh, this is Jay, he juggles. But since you're talking in an art gallery now, and which this show is set in an art gallery or played in an art gallery, so and you're talking to other fine artists, they go, oh, he's a juggler, but he uses colors. He has different colors on his props.
Yeah, it's not a thing.
It doesn't seem like it's a thing, not even to artists or whatever. So it's like, yeah, but you.
There's a shorthand where people usually say, "What do you do?" I say, "I juggle." They go, "Oh, like a clown or in the circus." I go, "No, it's more like modern dance." Mm-hmm. And then they can kind of, because they have some sort of nebulous conception of what modern dance is.
Yeah.
So then it kind of works to smooth the conversation over.
Yeah.
But in the show I say. It's like you're a painter, you have one color blue, and you're going to paint a picture of the ocean and the sky. There'd just be no horizon, it'd be one big blue square. And then I said, that's where juggling's at right now, basically, in one way. But if you were a painter, you wouldn't stand for it. You'd go to the paint store where you could, again, a paint store exists with millions of colors of paints.
Yeah.
And so you could buy a different shade of blue, or you could even mix your own, because you have that autonomy in your practice as a painter, at that level of expression of color. So I say that in the show. That's one way to look at this situation we're in. And the other thing I always say is not in the show, but it's really a starting point of the show, as well, is you go to Google, just Google juggling props. Go to any website, click on rings, clubs, whatever. It's going to come up with a page of options of things you can buy. Look at the colors on that page. Now open a new tab, whatever, Google, Paris Fashion Week 2023, New York Fashion Week 2023, Google, whoever, Jeff Koons, whatever artist you want to pick, that's kind of the moment now, of the world we're living in now, contemporary society. The colors you see on the juggling page, it's not the conversation that's happening now in the world. Mm-hmm. That blue you can buy that club in, it's not the blue of the Paris Fashion Week. It's not the blue that, if you're into sneaker culture, that's on the latest whatever sneaker. It's a different color blue. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people could be like, man, that's so pretentious, or that's so stupid, or who cares? Well, as an artist, so I can agree. That's like a pretty extreme example there. But like as an artist, I want to be in dialogue with my time of where I live, man. I want to be... This goes back to Eric Auber's thing about bad self-esteem of circus artists, because we have our hierarchy right now in society of the arts, and you can say music's on top, and you got opera, theater, dance, everything's above, everybody jokes. Oh, I'm glad I'm a juggler. At least I'm not a mime, because at least jugglers are higher on that totem pole than mimes. So there's this imaginary totem pole. That joke's been around since I started 36 years ago, right? So we kind of we internalize this, and like Eric came out a few years ago and said like, hey, we all as circus artists, we have bad self-esteem, and we want to validate what we're doing by doing juggling and dance. Juggling and music. Why? Why can't we just juggle? It's because music is already an art form and people think music's cool. And there's a concert house that's built, like solid architecture, bricks and mortar built towards the validity of music. So if I can associate myself with that, suddenly I have status, I have power, I'm somebody. And so that idea then of saying, hey, I want to use, for example, something as, in one way, I'll do air quotes, trivial as color. What I'm saying is I want to have a dialogue with the world I live in now. I'm alive now. There's other people out in the world doing art now. They're doing science. They're doing I don't care what they're doing, architecture, or they're cooking. Cool. I want to juggle and not be ashamed that I juggle, and I want to juggle and I want to relate to people around me in the world I want to connect with people in the world that I live in, right? I want to be alive here and now and not living 80 years ago with these habits and traditions that just, and I think there's a lot of, it's not just color, right? But there's a lot of aspects of that in juggling that have been talked about the past few years, and this kind of a new sort of wave of juggling. And I think the same thing in magic, right? You have magie nouvelle and like these things of like, for example, in magic, you know, it used to be like, here's a silk and here's an empty tube, because that's what you do 100 years ago. And then it's like, well, why do I have a tube? Or even better, you know, like I'm going to take a top hat and pull a rabbit out of it. Well, top hat, it wasn't a magic prop. It was contemporary of the time. People wore top hats on the street, right?
If you're in the theater now to see the magic show, chances are most people were certainly wearing a hat, and a lot of them were wearing top hats. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about, is being in dialogue with the time where you're living. And I got sick of that. I got sick of just being out of step of these conversations people were having.
It's like, if you look at it like that, then, and in a certain sense, when David Blaine exploded onto the scene with his street magic thing, right, and he was doing old school tricks, ambitious card, and blowing people's minds. It's like going, oh, all of a sudden we have street magic. It was as revolutionary as graffiti. Like I don't know, and breakdance. Like you just took something that existed, art, and then you did it on the wall of a house illegally, and you did it on dance or whatever. So you're breaking new. It's also like, I feel like that what you have done by talking about this, so that's what we're doing now, is to highlight a facet that has always been there. There have always been colors, and the world has its relation to colors, and within juggling, that relationship is totally different. And as you describe in your TED talk or whatever, like how the reason the ring is a certain size has to do with with a cake tin that was in that guy's office, and they used
That's exactly what I wanted to say.
It was made absolutely arbitrarily, and it wasn't thought through and gone, this is the reason why we're doing it. So now you're taking the concept of color and you are exploding that up and going, all right, why is it like this? Let's examine that, and let's take the first idea that you ever had. I want to have that color wheel and click that button and get exactly the prop that I want, because I have something specific I want to express, or I am performing at the 2024 Paris Fashion Week, right. And I can't use a red, yellow, and blue that was somehow randomly chosen in 1984, and they've just chosen to keep those in mind.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so that's exactly what I was going to say. That whole point is basically we're in this, I mean, Eric maybe has a different name for it, a little bit better than me, but we're in an age of consciousness of juggling. That's where we're at. Some sort of age of consciousness, of taking control over the variables that we're playing with. And so it doesn't even have to be that I know a specific thing I want to express, so I need a certain color. It can just be for fun.
Yeah, it could be for fun. Or that's why I also like, because I'm a professional, so I like, if you're going to come and work with this company and their logo and aesthetic is black and a particular shade of blue, and you stand on that stage and you come out and you go tell them that how it's going to be, and you're going to juggle the props, and when they lie it out on the stage beforehand, the rings are in a pattern that matches their logo, and then you take the rings down and it's like, you go, that could be sold to someone, or it can have a resonance, or you get to working with a specific company or a specific festival where these are the colors, and you can click these things, and just like you can print a book on demand now, it used to be that needed to print 5,000, now you can print one for competitive prices. You should be able to get these things made. I don't know the story, but there's all sorts of utility value of having these things as a working artist. And then, like you say, the key thing at the bottom of it for the hobby culture, because juggling and magic both have these possibly much bigger hobby than professionals, that you just actually, some people just care about a specific color or not that just matches what they have made for their whatever reason.
I mean to use like a real example is that in the journey of making this show, which took me 15 years to make the show, and I would say 12 years of that process was to get the colored the different colored props. And the reason it took so long is because exactly I would approach a prop manufacturer and say, hey, I would like to have juggling clubs in this color. And then one of the parts of the responses they would give me is, well, that's not economically viable because you're the only one in the world who will buy this color. And if we make this color at scale that we would need to make it at, nobody would buy it.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that there's a commercial connection to these colors. But you nailed it exactly with the ring, the size of the ring example from the TED Talk. All of these things have been chosen arbitrarily. That's fine. That's cool. It got us to where we are today. I've had a wonderful life juggling. It's been the most amazing life, man. You know that. But like, but it's all been in one way, from another viewpoint, completely accidental. And maybe it should be. That's how the journey went. No problem. It's cool. I'm not saying it has to have a bigger or better idea. It doesn't have to be deeper than this. But it can be down to, you picked that thing that was yellow. Would you like to have a different yellow? Maybe more yellow, or a lighter or darker shade, or a different hue, or whatever, different saturation, different intensity. Oh, you would like it? Cool. Can't we do that for, like, it doesn't have to be a deep reason about art or money or expression or Paris Fashion Week or whatever stupid, framework we put it in. It can just be like, oh, I like it. I like that color blue. Cool. Can I have some juggling rings in that color? Yes, you can. Awesome. Now, like, just this idea that we can start to examine and deconstruct and redefine and comprehend all of these different little details of what we're doing, like with juggling. With Eric, the definition of juggling. What is juggling? What's a drop? What's the history of juggling? What's a juggling club? What's a juggling ball? What's again, so just kind of looking at all these different aspects that we take for granted. When I was young, I took for granted that this is the color of this object and that it doesn't. And I also took for granted that was good enough. I took for granted that it didn't really matter in the end. Because especially when I bought those 4 balls on sale, it did not matter what color they were, because I was only interested in the aspect that I would throw and catch the 4 balls without dropping them for a long time, right? And in that way, the color, for all intents and purposes, was completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
But now we're at the point where we've had this journey over these 3-4 decades now with juggling as art. So maybe it's time to start having these conversations. And in one way, I just have to say, and then we can jump into the next part of this, maybe to wrap this little
we're wrapping
this thing up. But like, in one way, I feel, because you can tell when we talk about this photo, I get very excited.
Yeah.
And I kind of start to wave my arms around and yell and scream a little bit and rant. And I've been kind of waving my arms around and yelling about this for so long. I mean, this show took me 15 years to make. And sometimes I realize, like, I should just wake up and realize we're not where we were 15 years ago. Let me give an example. It's like when we did the REFLEX show together, and I did that performance in New York, in the show, I build such a argument towards juggling being art that sometimes in that show, in one way, right? We can look at that aspect, right? And in one way, it's like, I was so prepared. I had my notes. I had my arguments ready. I was practiced, rehearsed, and well thought out, and really full of energy, and got a lot of good sleep. I was ready for the fight. And I came out on stage in New York, and I was like, juggling's art because of this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And kind of as soon as I said juggling was art, a lot of times the audiences were like, okay, cool.
Where do we go from here?
Exactly. Like, I spent all my time arguing that juggling was art, that I could have spent that time doing juggling as art after I just made my initial statement. And I feel a little bit like that with color right now. Yeah. Where it's like, for so many years I've been screaming like, hey, let's get some, like, let's have an investigation into color and this and this and that. Where, to be fair and to be clear, I probably could have stopped yelling about this maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago and just got on with juggling about color. Because I don't think in the end too many people are arguing against me in the specific sense, or like in the day-to-day life. Like, because the thing is, when people see the props that I've managed to go through making of the different colors, especially jugglers, like, so in the show I have all these different colored rings, right? And the number one thing that jugglers say to me after the show is, oh, can I buy some? Like, where can I buy some of those? And I'm always like, and now I'm always like, oh, what do you like? Why do you want to buy some? And they go, oh, they look really nice. And that's the conversation. It doesn't have to be an hour-long talk.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
But it's also, so what we're butting up against here too, which you have talked about on object episodes or whatever as well. It's like if the person who runs one company who makes juggling clubs gets a stroke and stops making juggling clubs, all of a sudden you lose 35% of the people who of the props available to you.
Yeah,
because it's a small.
The culture's so thin.
Yes, it's thin. It's a fragile kind of thing. So
fragile. Yeah.
So there is an aspect of some of this is actually purely economical. When I say, just like you print a book, you can get a juggling ball printed out in whatever color, and technically. That might be that you need somebody with that passion that you have to set this up, and then once that person has done it, there might be that the whole industry just swaps to get whoever machines exist in China that can make that, and that there is an aspect of practicality here that is like, and nobody, everyone would know that you probably don't get into making juggling clubs to become rich. So there's small margins of stuff. So there's a practical aspect. But for that we go. It's great that you go. Yeah, maybe we stopped yelling about this 15 years ago, and now we're going to make the show. And you did make the show, and people come and look at it. And a lot of these things that you have thought about it, they see the rings and they go, oh, where can I buy that? I'd like to do that. I love that color. I've never seen anything. And then they go, okay, this is great. And also, just to end on a kind of high note, it's like each artist, and we'll talk about that because this then becomes truly connected to art because you're juggling it within an art context too. So that's also interesting, which steps further on from that. But it's like each artist. And the easy thing is Picasso, who had a blue period where he just painted a lot of blue, and that's a thing that he did, and he did this. And just like whenever a visual artist, a painter or whatever, they will go through different explorations of like for a year or so, and then they make one or two exhibits that year, and then they go to the next thing, and they've moved on. And you might see when you look at all the pictures in a row that it's a sliding scale, like species changing from one to another. Where is it? When is it an ape, and when is it human? I mean, it is a gliding thing because it isn't actually there's no full cutoff there, but there. So this is then your exploration, or like finally you're putting on display your exploration of color. And I wanted to talk about Joseph Albers a little bit and whatever, but we can do all that because those are all things that are within the show. But this has been a good preliminary episode that talks about color as an aspect of juggling, where it comes from, where the questions are, the little bits where people have feelings about it. And I go, amateur as I was when I was juggling, no matter how dedicated I was in the mid-90s, that I wanted to be a juggler, I too went through some of those exact sort of steps. But because the conversation was so shallow, I didn't clock onto it, and I gave up on juggling and went over into other fields and never reached that. So you have uncovered one thing and you blow it up, and it takes an hour just to get our head around why is this even a thing, and then we'll put an end to that now, and we'll pick it up again, talking specifically about the show.
Super.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jay. Excellent.
Yeah, man.
Everything is interesting, and it feels always like we could always just dig deeper and deeper into all this stuff. We spoke about that a little bit in the last episode, how, you can take one little thing. I mean, that I took, for instance, on the play and connect from Nala's book, The Clown Manifesto, and has basically going to make this whole season on play and connect, and I'm tying it in with evolution and the whole world, and it's going to be a whole season here that just sprung from 2 words. Now, of course, that's not quite true. It didn't just spring from those words. That's more complicated than that. But as always, that's what I'm saying. Everything is interesting and everything is complicated. But anyway, you can buy a t-shirt and you can support me. But I won't tell you how if you are to find out how to support me otherwise than buying a t-shirt, which you can find by just clicking onto anywhere where you found this podcast. You can click onto it. There's a link in the show notes to it. But if you want to support me in other ways, then you're going to have to use your imagination. I won't tell you that you should tell your friends, because you know that. So if you value this podcast the way as much as I value you as a listener, then tell someone about it. And until next time, tell your friends about it. Take care of yourself and those you love. And I hope to see you along the way.